Hello, my name is Ekaterini Vlahos, and I'm a professor of architecture at the University of Colorado, Denver, a licensed architect, and the former director of the Center of Preservation Research. In 2001, I wrote an article titled Documenting and Saving the Historic Ranches of Colorado for the National Park Service publication Vineyard. I described the preservation model developed in rural Colorado in response to the rapid development that was happening. With the 50th anniversary of the Cultural Landscape Symposium, I chose to take this as an opportunity to share this case study and 2 decades later, reflect on the outcome, impact, and potential next steps. As a native Coloradoan, I view the rural landscape of the American West as a lived experience, as a human ecosystem of the land, buildings, structures, and artifacts that constitute a region's material culture grounded in a unique way of life. This symbiosis of land and lifestyle was established and reshaped by people whose customs and values were maintained and whose ethos became synonymous with our national and Western character. After years of successful adaptation to changing practices, markets, and environmental effects, economic forces and encroachments into rural environments continue to threaten these cultural landscapes. The state of Colorado lost close to 7.5 million acres of ranch land to subdivisions, malls, and resort development over a 50-year period, while the state's population increased 4.5 million in the same time, with several million more projected to arrive in the next decades. That level of development threatens a part of the state's heritage and a way of life that currently contributes $40 billion a year to the state's economy. Over the past decade, Colorado has added almost 1 million new residents and increased the state's population by nearly 15% to 5.8 million people. The state's continued population growth is among the highest in the nation and prompted the initial creation of the pilot program in Routt County 2 decades ago. Located in the northwest corner of Colorado on the Wyoming border, Routt County grew more urban, more diverse, and older in the past decade. The county continues to maintain a ranching industry along a highly developed ski resort that dominates the real estate market. The total population is approximately 23,000 people, and the land mass is 1.5 million acres, 50% of which is in private ownership and 47% which is in agriculture, and has remained constant since 2002. From 1990 to 2001, 41% of the ranches that had over 400 acres shifted out of traditional ranching into a new use. 64% of the land was purchased by amenity buyers, and the land was coveted for its recreational use and not its productivity. This significant change is at the heart of this case study and prompted the development of a pilot program in Routt County. The program goals included creating a permanent record for the county of all the historic ranch properties, creating a repository of information for public benefit, providing documentation for future preservation planning, the ability to replicate the program statewide in other counties, and initiating a research study of the region's vernacular architecture and cultural landscapes. I worked from the principle that multiple forms of evidence facilitate informed decision-making to plot an effective course of action to meet a community's preservation needs. This could not be done alone and incorporated a number of partners: the University of Colorado, Denver, and the Center of Preservation Research. Within Routt County, historic Routt County, the City of Steamboat Springs, the Yampa Valley Land Trust, the Community Agriculture Alliance, and the ranchers and their families, all of who shared a common interest in preserving the ranching landscape and a way of life. There are 5 critical components to the process, which I will describe in detail. The first was identifying the community stakeholders. The primary and key component to the pilot program's success and access to the resources was community support for the project. The more the ranching community was involved in the pilot preservation efforts, the more likely the program would succeed. It was incentive-based for the community, and the survey effort became a powerful stimulus to public involvement by getting students engaged with the community. Developing the surveys and gathering the data contributed to public support by helping others understand what is important about the community's past. By identifying the stakeholders early in the process, we located properties to make the most of the unique historic qualities of the region. The partners identified 300 properties initially. The second component was to identify the survey team. There were two types of surveys. One group with historic Routt County and one group of graduate students from the university. Both researched and gathered information to develop the architectural surveys, and the second group focused on historic architecture building survey drawings. The third component was to develop a historic context. The historic context provided background information about the patterns of history and development that shaped this particular geographic area in the state. It linked rural properties with significant trends or themes such as homesteading, grazing, and livestock development. In addition, it included an understanding of the spatial organization, concentration of historic characteristics, evidence of the historical period of development of the properties, and an understanding of the processes and physical components that made up the larger cultural landscape. It also influenced the character and composition of a ranch by modifying the topography and natural environment, seen through homesteading acts, politics, ethnic traditions, economics, and natural resources, which determined the rural community's organization. The historic context created the framework of the larger cultural landscape in Routt County and allowed each property that was surveyed to be included as a significant part of the whole. The fourth component was to actually identify the properties for the survey in collaboration with the community. Historic Routt County selected 5 well-known and respected landowners throughout the area to survey and document their properties. Once completed, each family shared their experience with others in that area of the county, encouraging them to participate in the process. Based on the initial property owners, we divided the county into manageable areas for future properties to be scheduled, surveyed, and documented. The group identified landowners that met the criteria while defining the architectural and historical significance of each property. The strength of the partnership was connecting students to the ranchers, where they could conduct oral histories, field surveys, and documentation. The site revealed facts about their daily lives, values, interests, and beliefs. The landscape represented a large part of the ranch's history, but also included the people's memories, thoughts, expressions, and way of life. The student surveys each of the areas and resided with the ranching families to gather these stories from them directly. The fifth component was the documentation method. For the first part, an architectural inventory form was used with an expanded description to include the cultural landscape of the properties. The first team worked with Historic Routt County to broaden the existing survey forms while working directly with the property owners to survey each property. The second team included graduate students who were studying documentation methods in classes, including Habs, Hare, and Howes. The second form of documentation followed the historic architecture building survey drawing criteria. Throughout the process and in the middle of the survey, Howes was established in 2001. A total of 100 properties were identified and surveyed, with 15 being selected for detailed drawings. 2 decades later, the ranches proved that cultural landscapes can in fact be destroyed, preserved, or adapted. The documentation is continuously being used for interpretive purposes, resource management, and preservation planning. By understanding and appreciating the quality of life within these ranching landscapes and interpreting their historical importance, we can collectively begin to understand how they better inform our future design and building practices and plan for their ongoing protection and management. Thank you very much.